For centuries, skeptics dismissed the Bible as mythology. The walls of Jericho, a metaphor. King David, a legend. The Hittite Empire, fiction. The Pool of Siloam, religious imagination. Then archaeologists started digging. What they found shocked the academic world. Physical evidence confirming biblical accounts. Not metaphors, not legends, not faith-based stories, but actual historical events verified by carbon dating, inscriptions, and archaeological layers. This isn't about proving religion. This is about 5 times when science and archaeology discovered that events described in ancient texts actually happened, exactly where, and when the Bible said they did. By the end of this video, you'll see how modern archaeology has transformed our understanding of biblical historicity, and why some of these discoveries made headline news worldwide. Hit subscribe. When faith meets evidence, the results are extraordinary. Before we begin, an important clarification. This video examines historical and archaeological evidence, not theological claims. What we're not claiming, we're not trying to prove divine inspiration, validate religious beliefs, argue for literal biblical interpretation, convert anyone to faith. What we are examining, we're exploring cases where biblical accounts describe specific historical events. Archaeological evidence confirms those events occurred, dating aligns with biblical chronology, physical remains match textual descriptions, the historical context for much of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Many scholars viewed the Bible as primarily mythological. Biblical figures were considered legendary. Accounts were seen as religious storytelling, not history. Minimal archaeological evidence existed, then systematic excavations began. 1920s present. Major digs across Middle East inscriptions discovered mentioning biblical figures, city layers matching biblical accounts, artifacts confirming historical details. The academic shift modern biblical archaeology recognizes. Some biblical accounts contain historical cores, others are clearly theological/literary. Each text requires careful analysis. Archaeological evidence must be rigorously evaluated. The 5 cases today, we examine 5 specific instances where archaeology confirms biblical accounts. The walls of Jericho, the existence of King David, the Pool of Siloam, the Hittite Empire, ancient flood events. Each case involves physical evidence, peer-reviewed research, and scholarly consensus. If examining where history and ancient texts intersect fascinates you, drop a like. These discoveries changed archaeology forever. Story 1. The walls of Jericho. The book of Joshua describes Israelites conquering the fortified city of Jericho. The walls collapsed, allowing invasion. For centuries, this seemed like pure legend. Then archaeologists excavated ancient Jericho. The biblical account Joshua 6 describes Israelites circle Jericho for 6 days and 7th day. Priests blow trumpets, walls collapse, inward city is conquered and burned. The archaeological site Jericho, Tel Sultan, is one of the oldest continuously inhabited sites. Located in West Bank, near Jordan River, occupied for over 10,000 years. Multiple city layers from different periods excavated since 1907. Major excavations John Garstang, 1930 to 1936, found massive defensive walls. Discovered destruction layer with burned debris. Dated collapse to approximately 1400 BCE. Claimed evidence supported biblical account Kathleen Kenyon, 1952 to 1958. More sophisticated archaeological methods challenged Garstang's dating. Placed wall collapse centuries earlier, 1550 BCE. Concluded no city existed during supposed conquest, 1400 BCE. Bryant Wood, 1990s reassessment reviewed Kenyon's findings, argued her dating was flawed. Claimed evidence actually supports 1400 BCE. Date points to pottery styles matching late Bronze Age. Destruction layer with burned grain stores. Wall collapse pattern unusual for earthquake. The physical evidence. What archaeologists found: massive mud brick walls, double wall system, evidence of violent destruction. Thick ash layer indicating intense fire. Stored grain jars, suggesting sudden destruction. Wall sections collapsed outward, then inward. No prolonged siege evidence. Grain still present. The collapse pattern particularly intriguing. Walls fell in such a way that rubble formed ramps. Attackers could walk up collapsed debris into city. Unusual for typical siege or earthquake. Matches description of walls falling flat. The controversy. The debate continues. Arguments for biblical correlation. Destruction layer exists. Dating can be interpreted to match biblical timeline. Collapse pattern. Unusual grain stores suggest rapid conquest. Arguments against carbon dating remains disputed. Multiple destruction layers. Which one is Joshua's? No inscriptions confirm Israelite conquest. Archaeological evidence subject to interpretation. The scientific consensus: most archaeologists agree. Ancient Jericho was destroyed multiple times. Massive walls did collapse in late Bronze Age. City was burned. Exact dating remains debated. Whether this was the specific event described in Joshua remains controversial, but the physical evidence of dramatic wall collapse and destruction is undeniable. Why this matters: Jericho's excavation showed biblical locations are often real historical sites. Ancient accounts sometimes contain historical cores. Archaeological methods can test textual claims, but evidence often requires interpretation. The walls of Jericho really did fall. Archaeology proves that. Whether they fell because of Joshua or other reasons remains debated. What do you think? Share your perspective in the comments. Story 2. King David's existence. For decades, many scholars considered King David a legendary figure, the ancient Israelite equivalent of King Arthur. Then in 1993, archaeologists found an inscription that changed everything. The biblical account: David appears extensively in 1 Samuel through 1 Kings, described as shepherd who became king, united Israelite tribes into kingdom-ruled c. 1010 to 970 BCE. Traditional dating: father of Solomon dynasty. Founded. The skeptical position: before 1993, many scholars argued no extra-biblical evidence mentioned David. United monarchy might be literary invention. David possibly legendary king like Arthur. Biblical account written centuries after supposed events. The Tel Dan stele discovered July 1993, northern Israel. Archaeologist Abraham Byron excavating Tel Dan discovered fragment of basalt stele, inscribed stone, dated to 9th century BCE, 100 to 150 years after David. Written in Aramaic. The inscription: the stele contains Aramaic text from King Hazael of Aram. Damascus boasts of military victory over Israel. Critical phrase: House of David, BYTDWD in Hebrew. First extra-biblical mention of David. The significance: why this matters. Confirms David was real historical figure. House of David equals David's royal dynasty. Written just 100 to 150 years after David's time by enemy of Israel, not biased biblical source. Uses David's name as dynastic reference. Additional discoveries: Mesha stele, Moabite stone discovered 1868, but recently re-examined 9th century BCE. Inscription: possible reference to House of David, disputed, from Moabite king boasting of victory. Shoshank relief. Egypt Karnak temple. Egypt Pharaoh Shoshank I, biblical. Shishak lists conquered cities, including some from David/Solomon. Confirms military campaigns in region. What we know versus what we don't. Confirmed by archaeology. David was real historical figure. He founded a royal dynasty. He ruled in 10th century BC. His dynasty was known to neighboring kingdoms. Not confirmed by archaeology. Extent of his kingdom. Details of his life. Many specific events described in Bible weather accounts are accurate or legendary. The Jerusalem evidence: excavations in Jerusalem have found large stone structure, possible palace, stepped stone structure. 10th century BCE, pottery from Davidic period. Debated whether they're from David's actual reign. The scholarly debate arguments continue about size of David's kingdom, empire, or small chiefdom. Historical accuracy of biblical narratives. Relationship between archaeology and texts. Political implications of findings. Why this changed everything. The Tel Dan stele transformed the debate. Moved David from possibly legendary to definitely historical. Showed biblical texts contain historical information. Proved ancient inscriptions could verify biblical claims. Demonstrated importance of continued excavation. The broader implication: David's confirmation suggests other biblical figures may also be historical. Dismissing accounts as pure legend is premature. Archaeological discoveries can change scholarly consensus. Ancient texts often contain kernels of historical truth. Story 3. The Pool of Siloam. The Gospel of John describes Jesus healing a blind man at the Pool of Siloam. For 2,000 years, the location was lost. Then in 2004, a construction worker accidentally discovered it, exactly where John said it would be. The biblical account: John 9:1-11. Jesus encounters blind man, makes mud with saliva, places on man's eyes, tells him, "Go wash in the Pool of Siloam." Man goes, washes, receives sight. Creates controversy with Pharisees. The historical context: ancient Jerusalem's water system. City depended on Gihon spring outside walls. King Hezekiah built tunnel. 701 BCE. bringing water inside water collected in pool within. City pool existed for centuries, the lost location over time. Exact location of the pool was forgotten. Byzantine Christians built church at assumed site. Modern pilgrim site didn't match ancient description. Scholars debated where original pool was. The accidental discovery. June 2004. Workers repairing sewage pipe near Temple Mount uncovered ancient stone steps called Israel Antiquities Authority. Excavation revealed massive pool complex. They found the excavation revealed large ritual bath, mikveh. Complex stone steps descending into pool on multiple sides. Pool measured approximately 225 feet by 225 feet. Dating Second Temple period, time of Jesus, matches John's description exactly. The archaeological evidence. Physical features confirm gospel account. Located in Siloam/Shiloah area, John 9 verse 7, dated to correct period, early 1st century C. Ritual bath function, washing for purification. Size and grandeur match historical descriptions. Connected to Hezekiah's tunnel. The coins found in the pool, dated from Alexander the Great to early Roman period, include coins from time of Pontius Pilate. Confirm pool was active during Jesus's lifetime. Match timing of gospel narrative. Why this discovery matters. Significance proves John's gospel contains accurate topographical information. Shows gospel writers knew Jerusalem's geography. Suggests eyewitness knowledge or reliable sources. Confirms historical setting of gospel accounts. The theological debate. Important distinction. Finding the pool doesn't prove the miracle but confirms the historical setting was real. Shows gospel isn't pure theological fiction. Contains real places, real geography, real history. The scholarly response. Archaeologists note Gospel of John often contains precise Jerusalem topography. Writer clearly familiar with pre-70 CE Jerusalem suggests composition closer to events than some scholars assumed. Physical evidence validates geographical claims. Other validated gospel locations, similar confirmations. Peter's house in Capernaum. Bethesda pool. John 5, pool of Bethesda's 5 porticos. Ancient synagogue at Capernaum. The pattern as excavations continue. More gospel locations are confirmed. Precise geographical details prove accurate. Suggests authors/sources had first-hand knowledge. Physical evidence supports historical framework. It doesn't prove important limitations. Doesn't validate miracle claims. Doesn't prove divine inspiration. Doesn't confirm every detail. Only shows geographical/historical accuracy, but it demonstrates gospel writers used real locations. They had accurate knowledge of 1st century Jerusalem historical settings. Our reliable accounts aren't pure fiction or allegory. Story 4. The Hittite Empire. The Bible mentions the Hittites dozens of times. For centuries, critics claimed they were fictional, a made-up people the Bible invented. Then archaeologists discovered an entire empire. The biblical references the Hittites appear in Genesis, Hittites sell burial plot to Abraham, Joshua, Hittites among Canaanite peoples. 1 Kings, Solomon trades with Hittite kings. 2 Kings, Hittite armies feared by Arameans. The skeptical position. 19th century scholars argued no historical evidence for Hittites existed. No inscriptions mentioned them. No extra-biblical sources confirmed them. Possibly confused with other peoples. Maybe entirely fictional. The first clues. 1870s, 1880s. Inscriptions in unknown script found in Turkey. Strange hieroglyphics discovered at Hamath. Syria. Scholars puzzled by unknown writing system. Connection to biblical Hittites not yet made. The major discovery. 1906-1907. Hugo Winkler excavates Bagaskoy, Turkey. Discovered over 10,000 cuneiform tablets. Found massive city ruins. Identified as Hattusa, capital of Hittite Empire. Revealed enormous empire lasting 500+ years, 1600 to 1180 BCE. What was discovered? The excavations revealed major ancient empire contemporary with Egypt. Territory spanning modern Turkey. Advanced civilization with writing, laws, diplomacy. Military power challenging Egyptian dominance. Sophisticated treaty systems. The Hittite Empire. Archaeological evidence shows empire flourished 1600 to 1180 BCE. Capital at Hattusa housed 40,000 to 50,000 people. Controlled Anatolia and parts of Syria. Fought Battle of Kadesh against Egypt. 1274 BCE. Created earliest known peace treaty. The Egyptian connection. Additional confirmation. Egyptian records mention Kedah, Hittites. Battle of Kadesh described in Egyptian inscriptions. Egyptian-Hittite peace treaty survives. Matches biblical timeline and geography. The biblical accuracy. Bible's Hittite references are historically sound. Abraham purchasing land in Canaan, Genesis. Hittites as major military power, 2 Kings. Solomon's trade connections, 1 Kings. Geographical locations match the legal codes Hittite law codes discovered. Complex legal system treaties with neighboring states compare. Interestingly, with biblical law codes show legal sophistication of ancient world. Why this matters, the Hittite discovery showed. Biblical references aren't automatically fictional. Absence of evidence isn't evidence of absence. Archaeology can vindicate ancient texts. Biblical writers had accurate historical knowledge. The paradigm shift. This discovery changed how scholars approached the Bible. More cautious about dismissing references, greater respect for historical framework, recognition that biblical world was. Real importance of continued archaeological work. The lesson the Hittite case demonstrates. Archaeological knowledge is incomplete. Major civilizations can be forgotten. Ancient texts may preserve accurate information. Skepticism should be balanced with openness. Other mythical peoples confirmed similar patterns. Philistines, confirmed by archaeology. Moabites, Mesha Steel, Edomites, archaeological sites. Various biblical nations validated current status today. Hittite civilization is well documented. Museums display Hittite artifacts. Language is deciphered. History is understood. Biblical references are vindicated. No one doubts the Hittites existed anymore. A complete reversal from 150 years ago. Story 5. Ancient flood evidence. The Genesis flood narrative was dismissed as pure mythology. Then archaeologists discovered that ancient Mesopotamian civilizations all recorded catastrophic flood events and found physical evidence of massive floods. The biblical account Genesis 6-9 describes global flood destroying all life. Noah's family and animals saved in ark. Waters cover entire earth. Ark lands on mountains of Ararat. Humanity repopulate from Noah's descendants. The archaeological evidence was actually discovered. Mesopotamian flood deposits. Excavations at Ur, Kish, Shuruppak. Multiple cities show flood layers dated to approximately 2900 BC. Thick layers of water-deposited clay separating older and newer occupation layers. Sir Leonard Woolley's discovery 1929. Ur excavation. Woolley found 11-foot thick flood layer clean water-deposited clay between occupation levels. Initially thought he'd found Noah's flood, later realized it was regional, not global. Multiple flood traditions. Ancient Near Eastern flood stories. Epic of Gilgamesh. Babylonian Utnapishtim warned of flood by gods. Builds boat. Saves animals and family. Flood destroys humanity. Boat lands on mountain. Striking similarities to Genesis account. Atrahasis epic. Sumerian/Babylonian earlier version of flood story. 1800 BCE. Gods send flood to reduce human population. Atrahasis builds boat and survives. Predates biblical text. Sumerian flood story. King Ziusudra survives flood. Earliest known version. 2000 BCE. Fragments survive on cuneiform tablets. The scientific understanding modern geology/archaeology shows multiple major floods occurred in Mesopotamia. Rivers regularly devastated lowland cities. One particularly massive flood around 2900 BC. Regional catastrophe. Not global flood affected large area of ancient civilization. The Tigris-Euphrates floodplain. Why this region flooded catastrophically. Flat terrain with poor drainage. Spring snowmelt from mountains. Heavy seasonal rains. Rivers overflowing banks would have seemed world-ending to inhabitants. The Black Sea flood theory. Controversial hypothesis. Ryan and Pittman 1997. Black Sea was originally freshwater lake. Mediterranean broke through Bosphorus 5600 BCE. Massive flooding of Black Sea basin possibly inspired flood traditions debated by geologists. The evidence shows scientific consensus. Catastrophic regional floods did occur. Multiple cities experienced major inundations. These events were recorded in multiple traditions. Genesis account shares elements with Mesopotamian stories. Physical flood deposits exist in archaeological record. The literary relationship. Scholarly view. Genesis flood story is related to Mesopotamian traditions, possibly common ancient memory of actual events. Biblical version, adapted with Hebrew theology. Core event may have historical basis. Details are theological/literary. What this doesn't prove. Important clarifications. Doesn't prove global flood. Doesn't validate all biblical details. Ark, animals, etc. Doesn't confirm supernatural elements. Shows regional catastrophic flooding, not worldwide deluge. What it does show valid conclusions. Biblical flood account has ancient Near Eastern parallels. Real catastrophic floods occurred in the region. Multiple cultures preserved flood memories. Some historical core likely exists. Ancient texts sometimes preserve disaster memories. The interpretation debate. Religious interpretations vary. Literalists. Affirms global flood. Moderates. Regional flood. Historicized. Critical. Scholars. Literary adaptation of ancient traditions. All acknowledge real floods inspired traditions. The broader pattern this case shows ancient myths often contain historical kernels. Catastrophic events are preserved in cultural memory. Multiple sources recording same events suggest reality. Physical evidence exists for ancient disasters. Texts and archaeology together reveal past events. Ancient civilizations across Mesopotamia recorded catastrophic floods, and archaeology found the flood deposits. What do you think this tells us about how historical events become religious narratives? Share your thoughts in the comments. We've examined 5 cases where archaeological evidence intersects with biblical accounts. What do these discoveries mean for our understanding of history, faith, and ancient texts? What we've learned. Case 1. Jericho. Ancient walls did collapse. City was destroyed by fire. Dating remains debated. Physical evidence undeniable. Case 2. King David. Confirmed as real historical figure. Founded royal dynasty known to neighboring kingdoms. Changed scholarly consensus. Case 3. Pool of Siloam. Found exactly where Gospel said. Dated to time of Jesus. Confirms geographical accuracy. Shows Gospel writers knew. Jerusalem. Case 4. Hittites. Entire empire discovered. Vindicated biblical references. Showed Bible contained accurate history. Transformed how scholars view text. Case 5. Ancient floods. Real catastrophic floods occurred. Multiple traditions preserve memories. Physical deposits found. Historical core to biblical account. The implications. What these discoveries tell us about the Bible contains historical information alongside theology. Authors had knowledge of their world, not pure mythology or allegory. Mixed genre. Requiring careful analysis. About archaeology. Can confirm aspects of ancient texts. Cannot prove supernatural claims. Provides context for religious narratives. Reveals ancient world accurately. About interpretation. Physical evidence requires careful analysis. Multiple interpretations often possible. Archaeology and text together reveal more than either alone. Dogmatism, religious or skeptical, is unjustified. What archaeology can and cannot do. Can confirm historical figures existed. Places where real events occurred. Cultural contexts. Accurate geographical details. Correct. Cannot confirm supernatural elements. Divine intervention. Miraculous events. Theological interpretations. Spiritual significance. The balanced approach. Reasonable conclusions. Biblical texts contain genuine historical information. They also contain theological interpretation. Each account requires individual assessment. Evidence should be evaluated objectively. Neither blind faith nor reflexive skepticism is warranted. The ongoing discoveries. Archaeology continues revealing more biblical sites are confirmed. Additional inscriptions mention biblical figures. Historical contexts are clarified. Understanding improves with each find. Why this matters beyond religious implications. Shows value of ancient texts as historical sources. Demonstrates importance of archaeology. Reveals ancient world more accurately. Helps us understand origins of religious traditions. The respectful middle ground we can acknowledge. Religious believers. Evidence supports historical framework. Skeptics. Not everything is mythology. Scholars. Texts contain mix of history and theology. Everyone. Archaeological evidence deserves serious consideration. The future. More discoveries are coming. New excavations plan. Technology improves constantly. Understanding will continue evolving. More biblical sites will be confirmed. Additional historical details will emerge. The final perspective. These 5 cases show that ancient religious texts aren't automatically false. Archaeological science can validate historical claims. Faith and evidence aren't necessarily opposed. Truth is often more complex than pure skepticism or pure literalism. The ancient world was real, and sometimes ancient texts describe it accurately. The takeaway, whether you're religious believer seeking confirmation, skeptic interested in evidence, scholar studying ancient history, simply curious about the past, these discoveries remind us the past was real. Ancient people recorded their world. Modern science can test ancient claims. Sometimes texts and evidence align. History is endlessly fascinating. If this examination of where archaeological evidence meets ancient texts has fascinated you, smash that like button and subscribe for more investigations where history, science, and ancient narratives intersect. And here's my question for you. Does archaeological confirmation of biblical locations and figures strengthen your view of the Bible as a historical source, or do you think it's separate from questions of faith? This is a respectful space for all perspectives. Share your thoughts in the comments. Hit that notification bell Until then, remember, the past speaks to us through multiple voices: ancient texts, physical remains, scientific analysis. When we listen to all of them together, we get closer to understanding what really happened.